everyone, and now as recently I've been trying to speedrun through these French missions because I've been doing a lot of clan wars and I haven't really had time to complete these missions because sadly you can't really complete them in clan wars. You have to play random battles to complete them. So well, you can see the matchmaking, it's pretty much purely tier 10, and the thing is, there's a mission that you need to get 1,000 hits in a game. So I started by playing an Atlanta game, but I still need about 600 more hits. You need the main battery hits, 600 of them. So I figured, what better than the trusty old Akizuki, a ship I've often recommended, a ship I consider extremely strong, especially of course with the build I recommend. I am still running my recommended build on Akizuki, which is of course the heavy DD Hunter build, kind of heavy DD Hunter spec I would call it. The concept of the build is of course you run Concealment Expert to be able to get close, you run Survivability Expert for the additional tankiness, and you run IFHE because you want that raw damage with those guns. Now I push into the cap and because I can fight all their DDs except one, and that's a Z52. And as I'm pushing into this cap, I see the detected sign, and I assume that's most likely the Hydro, which means the Z52 is in fact in this cap. Now, the Akizuki is a bully. It's a DD that can push into caps and it can fight pretty much any DD, it can take them on pretty easily. The Akizuki is an exception though. I'm sorry, the Z52 is an exception though. No one wants to fight a Z52 in a cap when he has Hydro on. When a Z52 pushes a cap and pops Hydro, unless you have a lot of support or someone who can radar him, whatever, you do not want to go anywhere near that. Even with someone to support you, you probably don't want to go take that fight anyway, because he can just smoke up and you'll be sailing around in his Hydro being absolutely wrecked. So the best way to deal with that is to disengage. My team, of course, as well, has decided to completely abandon A, so I wouldn't have had any backup. So the best choice is to disengage. I don't want to open a fire yet. I'm just gonna drop some torps on the Zao, use my torpedo reload, drop another volley of torps in case he turns away, potentially hit something moving from A towards B, you know, dual-purpose torps, you never know. In general, though, I want to be disengaging because I know the Z52 is there, I know he's pushing, and they got a lot of battleships there. Managed to catch the Zao with a torp, and at the same time he also gets Citadel. I open up to see if maybe I can kill him off before he can get into cover, but the Conqueror does in fact finish him. I'm not too afraid of shooting this Conqueror a bit as I'm just about to get around the corner. Normally, you generally don't want to be opening up in the open like this if there's too many people that can open fire on you. Charles Martel shoots me a bit, but once again I am getting into cover. The Z52, which we of course knew was there thanks to being briefly Hydro spotted, we knew he was there. Now, in the open like this, with this build, you can actually fight the Z52 quite well. You just gotta make sure you're angling away, you're kiting away, and you're able to bring all your gunpowder to bear, and you can do a lot of damage to him. You do not want to give full broadside so he can use that devastating German AP on you, but if you're able to deal damage like this, angling away, yeah, as I mentioned, if you fight other gunboats, the best way to fight is usually to kite away, if you're uncertain about the outcome. In this case, of course, I want to kite away from his teammates so they can't wreck me, and I want to kite away from him so I can so he'll struggle landing any shells on me. And I managed to trade really well, in fact. I chunk, I would say 7k health, maybe more, 7-8k health away from him, and I really haven't lost much health at all. In fact, some of the health was lost because of the Charles Martel shooting me. So, pretty early good trade. A bit of an issue here, my team is still in C, so I'm letting my team know, I'm congratulating them, you have secured C, and now they could please stop sailing towards C and sitting in C, because that's a really common thing. If you look at the battleships that are still in my spawn, they sail into a cap that we already own, and that's so pointless. If we already own the cap, why are you sailing there? We need B, we don't need C anymore, so actually sailing towards that cap is kinda pointless. But that's a really common thing in random battles, people kinda like to do that potato stuff. Moskva looks like he's turning, so I'm already switching to AP. This is something people underestimate a lot with the Akizuki, especially when they spec IFHE. Just because IFHE makes the HE stronger, doesn't mean you should neglect the AP. And that's because the AP can be absolutely disgusting. As you can see here, That is no joke. That DPM is no joke, and there's no way he can maintain that broadside towards me, because I will simply do so much damage to him. He realizes this and he quickly turns back, but I already did what? 12k damage to him? If he had kept he had to angle against the AP, otherwise he would have just gotten melted. So if he had kept sailing like that, I would probably have dealt 25-30k damage before he could get into cover behind the island. So the AP is something people tend to neglect a lot in the Akizuki, especially when they spec IFHE, because IFHE makes the HE very universal and very strong, but it's still not worth completely neglecting. As you can see here, the problem with the Moskva is that the Moskva has excellent armor, so even though we're landing a lot of shells, we're getting a lot of zero damage hits, and that's because even with IFHE, the gun caliber is so small that we can't get that many pens. I do, however, get a fire, which is really good, because I saw him eat the torp earlier, so he's probably used his damage con. So I'm trying to get a second fire on him as well, since fires will, and there it is, since fires will deal a lot of permanent damage to him. So I'm actually pretty satisfied with that. I did lose some health, but I managed to get 2 permanent fires on him. With permanent fires, I mean fires that will last the full duration and cannot be repaired. So that's going to add up to be a lot of damage on that Moskva. The reason, of course, I was willing to trade health to shoot him is because he's a radar cruiser. And that's not the kind of fight I would have picked with really any other cruiser in the open like that. The only reason I picked it with him was because he has radar, and as long as he's able to play aggressively with that radar, I can never smoke up and just shoot. I can never smoke up and just make use of this incredible gun power I have, because I'm constantly afraid of being radared. But by putting all that pressure on him, I mean, I dealt what? 30k damage almost to that guy. By putting all that pressure on him and forcing him to play back and forcing him to play defensive, I've opened up the possibility to smoke up. He did eventually get killed because of all that damage as well, but the initial plan behind focusing him was to give me more freedom to be able to do this exactly. Being able to smoke up and just ducka. Because this is kind of what, well, this is why we decided to play the ship to begin with. I needed 600 hits for the mission, and I needed to do some damage. And this is not really a torpedo boat. The Akizuki is not a hybrid, it's a gunboat. I mean, yes, you can use both guns and torps, but Akizuki should never be played with the assumption that even a sizable portion of your damage will come from torpedoes. If you land torps, great, fantastic, that's really good, but you should never focus your playstyle around the torpedoes. The priority focus should always be the guns, because the guns are reliable and the guns are consistent, and even with IFHE, with this build, you can just deal so much fire damage. I suspect, even though there was still 15 seconds left of my smoke, I decided to leave because I realized I'd been sitting there long enough that the Z-52 is probably rushing me. And that's exactly what he was. He torped and he rushed me, most likely with his Hydro active as well. And this kind of fight, even though he actually had a health advantage when the fight started, even though he's tier 10 and even though he has a lot of backup and I don't have any, the Akizuki firepower, especially when kiting away, if you look at the bottom left, you can see how angled I am. I'm kiting away from him constantly. The sheer firepower that you have with this IFHE build and with AR kicking in is just so devastatingly powerful that not even the Z-52, which is considered a really strong anti-DD counter, not even the Z-52 can take you on. Now I just have to dodge incoming shells and survive as long as possible, because I got 2 secondary spec German battleships aiming at me and I got a cruiser aiming at me. So I'm just basically trying to live and just survive as long as possible. I do not want to be shooting at this point, because if I do open up fire, well, then I'm gonna die. I'm getting some unfortunate blind secondary hits with all those shells flying your way. I end up eating a ton of them, and that's actually really unfortunate because it puts me so low that one single overpen from any of these battleships will kill me now. Which means I will have to play with my smokes a lot. But I have been saving my smokes for this reason. I haven't used any smokes. In fact, I haven't wasted a single smoke. Every single smoke has been very calculated and planned. So the ability to use them now, when there's no more Moskvas who can radar me, no more Z-52 who can Hydra me, means that I have the opportunity to deal a lot of damage. The risk, however, exists that this guy will blind fire me in the smoke, and for that reason, if you look at the bottom left, you can see that I'm actually moving full speed within my smoke. This is why you always make sure your smokes are fairly large. I reversed full speed, and I'm gonna start accelerating as well, because I do suspect he will start firing at me at this point. At this point, I'm holding down mouse 1 just to get additional fires. You can also shoot volleys, but I'm kind of trying to bait him into shooting past me. They shoot short, which works. Both the battleships are blind firing, and this is honestly really tense. This is quite risky, and if it wasn't for the mission, and if it wasn't for the fact that we pretty much won this game, I would probably play a bit safer than this. But considering I'm fairly confident the game is won, I'm just gonna rely on my ability to dodge and hopefully getting lucky enough that they don't get a single blind fire hit on me. Note that I'm angled and I'm kiting away. I move away from where I was, and that's exactly where he shot. So I kind of baited him into shooting where he thought I was instead of where I actually was. Had I been sitting still in the smoke, I would probably have died in that situation. That is of course why, first of all, when you deploy your smoke, you make sure you deploy your smoke as a large enough area that you can maneuver within it. And second of all, once you have that large area, make use of it. Whenever you see guns turned your way, make sure you're moving, make sure you're trying to dodge, and not making life easy. As soon as he shoots, I accelerate again. At that point, bit sketchy. It's a lot of RNG involved in hitting a DD like that if he can't lock onto anything, because his dispersion will be all over the place, and you, even if you dodge well, might still get hit by a random shot. So it's kind of like you're flipping a coin and hoping you don't get hit. Normally, of course, if you have more health, it's not that big a risk, but considering I'm playing with 500 health, 600 health, it is a pretty massive risk. On the plus side though, my AR is pretty much kicked into full gear, and I'm enjoying a 19% bonus to my reload at this point. So my reload and my DPM is of course insane. I'm pushing up, I still have a smoke left. I cannot shoot in the open, especially against secondary builds. All it takes is like 1 or 2 secondary hits and I'll die. So we have to push up and make use of our second smoke. We still need about 120 hits, and this Squad Force looks like a pretty juicy target for those hits. Dropping torps. I don't want to get, once again, you don't want to get too close. When you're this low HP, if I had more health, I might push a bit closer, but with this health, nah. We're gonna drop our smoke, we make sure we move while we're deploying it so it doesn't end up being too small. We do want some room to maneuver, so to say. And now I'm close enough and his guns are turning towards me. You note that I'm shooting volleys. Instead of shooting, holding down mouse 1 and constantly ducka, I'm shooting volleys. And that's to make it a bit harder for him to predict exactly where in the smoke I am. He does end up... Was that aimed at me, or was that aimed at someone behind me? I think it was aimed at someone behind me. The fact that he's not shooting me means that I'm not afraid to just hold down mouse 1 and shoot this constant stream of fire. The advantages of this constant stream of fire is that it's easier to adjust your aim based on enemy movements, and it's easier to constantly land those hits, because the reload is of course absurd for me right now. The downside is that you're easier to track in a smoke, and if he would be shooting me in the smoke, he would have an easier time tracking me. But as long as I can see his guns not pointed at me, I'm not too worried. It looks like his guns are turning to point at me though, which is risky, but I think I managed to just barely push past the 600 hits mark. And in fact, if we look at the game score, we can see I got 607 target hits. 202k damage, which is of course always nice. Only 1 kill though, but I did complete the French progression mission, which required 1000 hits, and I did kind of complete it in record time, which was of course the goal of playing this ship to begin with. Team score wise, 2.5k base XP, always satisfying. A lot of tier 10s, a lot of divisions, but I think we did just quite fine in our ship. The Akizuki is of course still extremely strong, and my build is just as good as it was back when I recommended it. I have seen no reason to change it. I think it's just an excellent build for an excellent ship. Looking at a detailed report, 992 HE shells, 64 AP shells fired. Torpedo damage, only 15k. Well, 16k, I guess you can add the flooding, 17k in total. But ultimately, pretty much all the damage comes from your guns. And that's pretty much how you play it. The Z52 I did his entire health pool in damage. I was the only one who dealt any damage to him, and that kind of shows how easily you can solo what is considered such a strong knife fighter, as long as you don't play by his rules. You don't allow him to use his Hydra against you. You don't allow him to use his AP against you. You just kite away and you make use of your superior tankiness and superior firepower, and even a Z52, which is so strong, can easily be overcome. 1.1 million potential damage, well, that's of course all the dodging. Not as much spotting damage as I would normally like to see in a DD, but then again my team did kind of sail a bit strangely. They kind of lemming trained into sea, and luckily we still managed to turn it around. Anyway, that was my Akizuki commentary. I haven't made one in a while, and this is still such a strong ship, very enjoyable ship. If you want to see my build, I can link to my previous Akizuki commentary. I can link it in the comments. I'll pin a comment, in fact, and link it to, and you can find my recommended build there. No point showing that build again, since I'm still using exactly the same build because it's so damn strong. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you guys enjoyed the vid.